Yeah, Brandon, thank you for joining us. It is a pleasure.
It's going to be a good one.
Yeah, welcome to the Soul Collective podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here.
Yes, yes, likewise. I just want to ask, you're doing so many cool things in the world. You're the founder of the Mystic Manor, which is an incredible retreat space located just outside of LA, and the host of a top-rated spirituality podcast and author of a brand new book that we're going to chat about. But, I want to ask you first for anybody that's not familiar with your work, just if you could share a little bit about who you are and what you're up to in the world.
Well, I was hoping you could tell me who I am because I haven't figured that out, I've got some ideas. Let's see. Where do I start? So I was born and raised in the East Coast in Virginia, and I live, as you mentioned, in the LA area in Venice Beach. I run a consciousness-centric communal property, I guess you would say, called the Mystic Manor. And yeah, that's definitely been a labor of love of mine over the last year and a half that I've focused on a lot. But yeah, I've been someone who started out, very conservative, kind of typical upbringing, no crazy journey, no crazy trauma. Um, Gratefully in this incarnation anyway. And so, I was raised very conservative Christian, and around 20, early 20s, I started having um I met someone with some psychic ability, intuitive ability, and I was like, hold on, what is this? This is fascinating. Like, and it really got me exploring ideas outside of what I had been raised to believe. And that just opened Pandora's box. I started having, some pretty fascinating experiences, and just opening my mind and heart to these concepts, and really it sort of, I started getting a picture of the ultimate nature of reality, as I like to call it, that to me felt like, oh my gosh, how is everyone not seeing this? It's so obvious to me now. And so I would just talk to anyone and everyone who would listen about this stuff. And my poor family and friends' ears would bleed hearing me, just excitedly talk about consciousness and the ultimate nature of reality. And so, I did that for many, many years. And then I finally, I started applying. A lot of it was, it's one thing to understand the stuff theoretically, and it's another thing to apply it in a meaningful way. So I was definitely, learning lessons, maybe slowly. I really watched for a long time. I would talk about this stuff, and no one around me was like into it or understood it or had heard of it. They'd be like, "Oh, wow, okay, Brandon, that's interesting," or "You're crazy," and whatever it was, and go back to their normal life. And so I just sort of, continued on this journey. And then maybe 2012 or so, it really, my life opened up a lot, where I started going to transformational festivals. And next thing I know, I'm surrounded by people who are, aware that, hey, yeah, we're all extensions of the one source consciousness that creates and animates all things. I'm you, you're me. We're wearing, this is a holographic reality. And next thing I know, I'm just surrounded by people of like mind, right? Not just reading about the stuff external to myself and feeling passionate, like that need to talk about it bubbling up inside of me. And so that was a big turning point for me. I started, applying, understanding how to unlock abundance in my own life and manifestation, really getting my sea legs with that. With in 2011, where I started a company. I was on my friend's couch at the time. I was wanting to manifest a lot of abundance to do big things in the world. And I, went from me with a concept and, $100 in my pocket on my friend's couch, to an Inc. 500 fastest growing private company in the US, doing 10 million plus a year in revenue, 100 plus employees. And, that was quite the learning journey for
Yeah.
me. Yeah, that was really cool. And, it was interesting to see how Abraham Hicks, are you familiar with Abraham Hicks' work? I'm assuming.
Yeah.
I love how she talks about, as you begin to understand that you're the, creator of your own, private YOU universe, as I like to put it, that you start to look around and say, oh, I did that. Oh, I did that. This thing that you like. Oh, I did that. See something you don't like. Oh, I did that, and understanding. And for me, that was an interesting journey from manifesting this big success, what 1 in 10,000 entrepreneurs is able to achieve, from a statistical, perspective. And and then also worrying about something, kind of having a little bit of like fear of loss energy in there, or conspiracy that someone's going to take something from me. And so I
Mm.
played that out in a very dramatic fashion with a couple business partners, and a betrayal, and getting offered $30 million for my company, and then within 12 hours losing nine of that offer, losing 90% of that our revenue, which blew that deal up. Then found out my partner was trying to steal what was left from me, and it's just like a saga out of the movie of my soul's narrative that it had written. And so I really stepped away from that, and um out of the ashes of that, some other great entrepreneurial ventures have come. But um around that time, I also I got to the point where I just had to find an outlet to talk about consciousness and the ultimate nature of reality. And that's when I started the Positive Head podcast. And at first, I started doing interviews with other people. I quickly realized I wanted to keep doing those interviews to explore other people's wisdom and perspectives, but I needed to I was talking over them way too much. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to expand this to 5 days a week so I can get out what's, my own stuff. And so I just started freestyling episodes. I wouldn't do a lot of planning, just what's coming through, what's happening in my own life, vulnerably sharing, authentically sharing. And I think that really struck a chord, the consistency with people, and the authenticity and vulnerability. And so, the podcast has done amazing, and I'm super blessed to have been on that journey. And still, now we're around 1,400 episodes, and
Wow.
been at it for a while. So yeah. And I have a friend, and dear partner, Dr. Erica Middlemiss, who does 2 days a week for me now, Tuesday and Thursday. So they get a little feminine touch in there these days. But yeah, and that's led me up to, um, a year and a half ago, the Mystic Manor, and wanting to expand Positive Head, which is audio only podcast, into a video production, like the evolution of it. So I started filming a late night style consciousness centric talk show called Optimistic. Spelled like mystical, MYSTIC. We put out 4 episodes. We started to release the episodes. We filmed 17. We started releasing the first ones the day LA went into lockdown for COVID, or the day before. And so it was just like things were in such an upheaval. The property here was a retreat center that was featured in the show, my retreat guests, and that would spend a week here. And so we kind of halted that because of the COVID stuff. And then we thought it looked like we were going to be added onto Amazon. That got strung along for many months until all of a sudden they said, nope, never mind. We're not adding Optimistic to our lineup. And, that's when I said, okay, why is this happening for me? Well, if I'm going to self-release the rest of the episodes of Optimistic, one of the upsides of that is I can promote my own things in it, because you don't see, promotion in Amazon shows, right? So, okay, well, I can't do retreats anymore. And I need something to help kind of, keep things going financially speaking. With, it's a lot more expensive to produce a late night style talk show like Optimistic than to do a podcast like this.
Yeah.
And so that's when I had the idea for the Golden Key: Modern Alchemy to Unlock Infinite Abundance. My book I just released last week, as of this recording. And the idea and the concept around gifting it and sharing the wealth with all the people who kind of get the word out about it. And that led me to a series of synchronicities like none other. And here we are. That may be more of an answer than you wanted. Hopefully not, but I tried to sum up the highlights. And now I'm just really excited to get the Golden Key out there and spread that wisdom. I truly feel like these keys that I've uncovered over 25 years of deep exploration are the quickest way to help wake up our planet. Maharishi said, if you can get 1% of the population, or 1% that's applying mindfulness practices, it will shift the collective. The book The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell said 10% adopting an idea and it's over. It spreads like wildfire. And so that for me, the Golden Key, that's why I'm gifting it, to the world, is my way to, I call it the good kind of selfish. I know if I give it away, it's only more abundance will flow back to me ultimately. And
Mhm.
it's gonna, I see it as my primary contribution to help spread consciousness and take our planet help navigate our planet into the planet of paradise it's destined to become.
So awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Brandon. I mean, there's so many windy roads that we could go on there because of your story. I mean, just so many lessons there. And I love how you shared about pivoting and really looking at the perspective in terms of like, how is this happening for me? Because I imagine, like
Yep.
anybody with a lot of, pieces of the puzzle sort of like planned and everything ends up happening differently. It's like, okay, we're gonna look at the blessing of this and look at how we can pivot really.
It's key. Yeah, life's what happens when your plans don't work out. And once you start to apply that vantage point of understanding that the dance with your higher self, source, God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, it's a dance you're creating. And you've also got your dharma built in, you've got your karma built in, you've got your energetic offerings from last week, last month, 10 years ago, other lifetimes. I believe it's all stirring into this pot of what manifests.
Yeah.
And when you only see so much of it, you only have so much control. And so what you do is you set a lot of people say expectation is the enemy, and I don't believe that at all. Expectations are great as long as you have a healthy sense of detachment with them. So I always look at it as this or something better. Okay, this is what I'm aiming for. I'm aiming for Amazon. Oh, didn't happen. Okay, why is this happening for me? I don't know exactly, but as one of the keys, the golden key, my book has seven keys, and then the eighth is kind of the golden key that ties them all together. And one of the seven is trust the mystery.
Mm,
Once you start to learn to trust the mystery, I don't fully know. It's not what I chose, but I know the underlying game that I'm a part of. It's all happening for love and for my highest, greatest, and grandest expression to be able to be realized. And I'm just here to follow the breadcrumbs.
yeah, I love that. And, something that I want to extrapolate from your story is like this sense of detachment, which you just touched upon. And it's like, the ability to take risks and just like play the game of life, which I feel like is so key because it's like not taking life overly seriously, which, myself definitely can have a tendency to do, but just like really want to ask you about that a little bit is like, do you feel like that's something that's like hardwired into your DNA? And if somebody is like risk adverse, is it something that they can cultivate in terms of like, stepping out there and making, some bigger, taking some bigger chances?
Great question. And I always put it like this. We can all make a basket if we practice shooting the ball, but we weren't all born to be Michael Jordan, right? Or Kobe Bryant or LeBron James. Like some people, have a dharmic trajectory where, certain strengths are more natural to others, some than others. Um, for me, one of my strength has been, I remember back when I was a teenager, my uncle calling me the eternal optimist. So I've always had this sort of, this, I love the Chinese proverb, fall down seven times, stand up eight. And that childlike, probably one of the most powerful channeling experiences I had, I guess you would say, like multidimensional, where someone goes into convulsions in front of me and starts bringing through a message, knows all these things about me years back, where that was their message to me. Is they're like, you are the soul of the eternal child. And they, and I definitely always say I'm the poster adult for childhood. I growing up is a bad idea. And so um but what he said in that moment is like, like the child that's walking on the beach and it's covered in starfish, and he's throwing them in one by one, and the old man, cynical man, comes along and says, why would you do that? You look, there's so many, you can't save them all. But the child is, the little boy is like, but I can save this one. And I think that is the essence of, you know where I hatched off from source in some way, shape, or form. So it's somewhat natural to me. However, can I get too serious? Can I be too focused on what's the numbers of my podcast, or is my book going to be this or that? Or yes, and I have to watch myself just like everyone else does, and
Mm.
realize that it's going to happen exactly as it should. And my friend Shaman Durek, I don't know if you've had him on the show or know him, but he just posted something the other day that I loved, and he said something to the effect of like, if you want to really experience the game of life, you've got to be childlike. It
Hmm.
is it is your inner child is waiting to come out and lead you. That joyous, creative being that has been squashed in so many of us by a culture who didn't understand the nature of the situation in which it finds itself. It's time for it to come back out and let it lead in these playful ways. I don't quote the Bible a lot, but when I do, I love the verse, lest you become like a child, you can't enter the kingdom of heaven. And
Hmm.
so that is key, is finding that playful spirit, because when you're in that state, you're dancing. Our number one job is to manage our vibration. Well, if I'm in the vibration of play, what am I attracting more of? Things that are playful and fun and joyous and exciting. If I'm super serious and brooding and you know just taking myself too seriously, then it becomes a really miserable journey. And so I think all of us, including me, as playful as I
Yeah.
can be, I have to be careful with that because I'm such a doer and, overachiever kind of personality.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe if you could share like a little bit of examples, like diving into that with all the stuff that you're creating and bringing forward is like the serious side and how that manifests. And then when you're in the childlike state of playing, like what that can
Hmm.
actually lead
Hmm.
to.
Yeah, great question. So the book is actually a really good mix of these things because I've done a lot of things, from running in hundreds of employees in a company to you know the podcast, and then shooting the show and running retreats, and I'd never done that when I set it up at the Mystic Manor. And they're all have been incredible experiences and taken a lot of my energy and focus and to pull them off. And I got to say, writing a book, my partner is, she just graduated with her master's in speech therapy, and she's like a rock star in that field. Already, like, student of the year in California. And so she's very, gifted in that realm. And she was sharing it with me, like, well, when I was going through the book and writing, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so intense, this process. It's so intensive. She goes, well, Brandon, that's writing is requires the most faculty of any of your faculties of any communication style. And podcasting is so much easier just for blah for me. I mean, but if you go and transcribe that, it's like, what is he saying? It makes sense and comes across fine to everyone listening, but writing is a whole nother thing,
Yeah.
And so that was a very serious and intense process. And however, I sort of metered that, I guess, with making it. I built in this whole golden game. Play a game with the universe, and let's talk. Let's face it, talk can be pretty cheap these days. Actions speak loudest. Or the results. I always say, if you're curious about a perspective, or like in the Golden Key, I say, look, read this with an open mind and heart, and then apply the ideas via a game that I've set up for you, and let the actions speak for themselves. Don't take my word for it. So I think that's finding a way to bring in play into something as serious and intensive energetically as writing was. That was a way that I found to balance it. And now that it's out, for just barely out, I get to like experience the playful part of it and people interacting, and then we're going to collect stories of people's manifested abundance and share those on the website goldenkey.gift. And so it's looking for the way to bring levity to the situation. If you're setting out with that lens, it's like, if you get a new Prius, all of a sudden you're going to see a lot more Priuses. It's like you focus on. So being conscious about where I'm choosing to focus. Okay, I'm going to do this very intense and serious thing, and I'm going to consciously focus on bringing some play to it.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important step.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it is so true that, like, once we see the results of our manifestation, we see something start to take tangible form, it's like, oh, I'm getting this, like
Yeah,
it's like
right.
that
I'm
hot.
doing something right.
Yes. Yeah. And I love how you're turning that into like a game to really teach this profound alchemy. So, what has been like really, where have you seen the most profound alchemy in your own life?
Ooh, great question. You got some good ones. The most profound alchemy in my own life. One of the things that I've often said is the only thing I'm really good at is telling stories, telling good stories about myself. once you start to play with the idea and experience and tap into the truth that you are one with the source consciousness that creates and animates all things, and a lot of people fall, there's kind of a pitfall on that journey where it's like, I am the one, I am the chosen one, I am God, and this sort of like Jesus spiritual narcissist pitfall, I think, is a, 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 a stopping off point on the journey to realizing, yes, you are the one, but so is the person experiencing homelessness next to you on the bus. It's all the one. It's all, everywhere you go, you're there waiting for yourself. It's all
Mm,
reflections of the one. So it, bring some humility to that, because you're everything. And from one perspective, I always talk about relative truths. Like, you and I are separate, that's true. You and I are one, that's true. Depending on the vantage point from which we are speaking, they're both true. So from one vantage point, yes, you are it. And from another, you are like a drop of sand in an infinite beach, right? So at least in the form of experiencing the avatar that you are currently in, there's like this sliding scale. At some point, I think you probably slide up and you're looking through the eyes of it all, which some people have those sorts of experiences with meditation or plant medicine or near death experiences. And so, you know where you stand now, you are super powerful, and you are also in an ocean that you're just along for the ride from another perspective. So I think that is a really key thing to understand. And as far as how I've alchemized things in my own life, so okay, I'm Brandon, I'm the creator of my own private universe, and everywhere I go, I'm there waiting for myself. Everything is props in my movie. Of course I make it. There's no one else here. I've never experienced the character, Emily. I've never experienced any of you guys out there listening. I don't know what that's really like. All I know is this vantage point. It's all the story in Afghanistan, whatever's happening there. That's a part of my consciousness that's filtering in the story of what's happening with the election, all whatever it is. It's all noise. It's a part of my extended consciousness. And so I always, it empowers me greatly, because it's like, the game becomes, how do I spin a story that serves me? Abracadabra means, it translates to, I create as I speak in ancient Aramaic. And, your words are your wands. So what am I telling about this story? A lot of time, what's happening is you're getting a lump of coal, and then you're looking at it and saying, oh, yep, that's a lump of coal. And you're right. I'm looking at it and saying, there's a lump of coal there. Wow, I wonder what the diamond is behind that. Oh, this challenge. I know this trigger, this challenge, it's coming up because there's actually a gift behind it. If I'm willing to shift my perspective and be patient with the process. And so everything, master is someone who embraces whatever shows up, because they realize, it's been put there to lead them to the next greatest and grandest version of themselves. So once you take that on, now I just make up great stories about myself. I don't believe in getting sick. Okay, great, Brandon. That's some person, people say that's complete BS. I've just said it my whole life. I'm not going to say I've never been sick, but compared to the average person, I've never been in a hospital. I can count on two hands the times I've thrown up. I just made it up, And people like Dr. Bruce Lipton have shown in the biology of belief how the science of this actually, backs this with what happens internally when I tell that story. 30% of all healings are placebo. 30%, including surgery. It's crazy. If I tell you, I'm going to knock you out and tell you I just did surgery on you and we fixed that crazy condition, you're going to probably heal because you believe that it happened when I did nothing except knock you out. It's crazy. And when you start to understand how powerful you are with the story that you weave. So, get really good at telling a story and retraining your brain to see it from a different vantage point. And so that's really how I've done it is, I say on the podcast, we teach best what we most need to learn. So, okay, how do I alchemize situations? Oh, I'm going to do 5 podcasts a week where I talk nothing about this stuff incessantly. So I'm so flooded with the vibration of what we're all feeling in this moment, right? And the more I stay in that state, the more I attract things that are a match to that. I heard a great quote yesterday or 2 days ago for the first time, and I love it. There's only one truth, your truth.
mm,
You're creating with your beliefs. Like, if Henry Ford said it well, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what's so funny is like I was listening to a podcast of you and you were talking about like your vision for, what you wanted to be doing in the world and podcasting and having this show. And then it's like, yeah, and here I am now doing it, and it's so true that if we immerse ourselves in something that we love, it eventually becomes our reality, but that's such a key nugget there is that like you are podcasting 5 days a week. So sometimes we're like, oh, but it's in my mind. This is my vision. This is what I want to be doing in the world, but we're like not actually doing it.
Well, a lot of people, they get hung up on this idea of they've got to be perfect. Perfect is the enemy of good enough. Just taking action and the whole universe starts to conspire and move in your favor. And, law of attraction, a lot of people get that all wrong. I talk a lot in the book about this. You know, if I sit here and meditate long enough, yes, that's a great part of it. And then the key word in law of attraction, action. You know, doing, there's a time and a place to actually do something. And a lot of people get so in their head and they're doing this silly thing of comparing themselves to you or me or someone else maybe that they see doing something that they want to do. Let's say the person out there listening who's thought about doing a podcast. They could approach this, hearing this as two ways. Speaking of the story, they could say, "Oh my gosh, Brandon's show has 1,400 episodes, and wow, of course he has a podcast. He did this, he's had this great success and 15 million downloads and yada yada. And I can't do that, right? Like I don't have those credentials. I didn't start with any of those credentials. The only thing I started with was on a friend's couch, believing I could do anything, right? And so the other way you can take this story is, oh wow, I really admire what they're both doing with this podcast thing, and actually I realized that in a sea of vibration, everything is vibrational, where infinite things are billions of things are vying for someone's attention right now, and they're listening to this, me and you, because there's such a close vibrational match that it's appeared in their movie, in their own private universe. It can't appear unless it's a vibrational match in some way. And you're so closely related to the energetic offering that we're both making in this moment that it's appearing out of infinite things vying for that attention. And so there's two very different approaches. I could never do that. Look at what separates me from them. Or, wow, I'm such a close
Hmm.
brother or sister to this vibration. I see source as this infinite tree, I mean, infinite in all directions. And yet there are branches, and yet on those branches, there are leaves flapping in the wind of eternity in a given moment. And if you're hearing this broadcast, you're such a close match. You're on the same branch, and a leaf flapping in the wind of eternity right now. So this is you. You're hearing yourself, and an extension of your own consciousness that you created in the form of the character that is, the two of us. And it's really just you reflecting you back to you. And so two very different ways to look at a situation and apply them. One is very disempowering, one is very empowering, you know, and which one you take on determines what happens from here.
Yeah. And whoever needs to hear that you need to start a podcast, this is your message.
Yeah, you got it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Some of us
And
getting chills right now.
yes, yes. And it is that powerful. It's like deciding to start before you're ready, and that's one of the things that I really want to talk to you about is like that overcoming fear, like that, voice
Mm-hmm.
inside that is like, okay, well, starting a retreat center, in the midst of everything that's happening, granted, you may not have, foreseen everything that was going to happen, right? But like still, quite a brave undertaking, right? And so advice on how to move through the fear and dance with it and be able to, yeah.
Fire, ready, aim. My friend Matt Kahn, when I had him on Optimistic, and he's been on Positive Head, he says, bleed on stage. People admire vulnerability. If you watch episode 1 of Optimistic, I start out, and you can watch it at optimistic.tv. But you'll see me first thing is getting up. It's a live audience. I'm getting up and doing an opening monologue. Never done this in my life. and it's followed by then an interview and then a musical performance and visionary artist. And we talk about their painting and, then retreat guest. And there's all these elements to the variety show. First thing is me getting up and talking for 10 minutes in front of a live audience. I hadn't done that. And I said, look, I'm not that slick at this stuff yet. I'm, if it scares me and it excites me, I know it's for me. And so, fear can mean FEAR, forget everything and run, or face everything and rise.
Mm,
And you step into that fear. You don't want to get to the other side. I had, I met a friend, or it was a friend of a friend who came to my house several years ago. And the friend of the friend, was just telling me about her life journey. We just got talking, and she said, "Yeah, I had a near death experience. I was swimming. I drowned. I couldn't stay above water anymore. I started going under. And next thing I know, I'm somewhere else. And I'm on the other side, if you will. And all of a sudden, there's a voice or someone there with me, and they're like, "Well, welcome back. You're here. You're back to where you came from, where you started from." And now that you're here, I mean, you feel fulfilled, right? You did everything you wanted, right? You took those big risks, right? You really went for it, right? Like in a very prodding way, and she hadn't. And she's like, "No, I didn't. I was playing it safe." And, and so next thing she knows, um, some hand pulls her from under the water to the surface. She can breathe again, and she gets to shore, and is now able to tell that story, which is now rippling out on this podcast. And so that's the message for you. You don't need to drown to find out that you you came here to go for it. You came here. This is your soul's. You are your soul's great masterpiece, your work of art. And it's not meant to be like, let me paint a bump on a log that's scared of their shadow. You've never seen a great painting or work of art with shadow in it, for that matter. So don't be scared of the darkness. It's all happening for the light to exist, and that you can't have, up without down, left without right, you know, light without dark. It's all so all great art is going to have some shadow in it. Yes, I took a great risk and then got dangled $30 million and then lost it within 12 hours, then betrayed by my partner, and could I have stayed on the sidelines and not experienced all the growth that came from that? I could have. I'm glad I didn't, you know. And was it scary at times? It was real scary. There's moments, where we were afraid we were going to get in trouble for, things. And I mean, just, I, you know, step into it. It's like speaking the truth, even if your voice trembles,
mm.
step into your fear. And it's key. It's a key part of the recipe of you living your greatest and grandest life.
Profound. Yeah, I really love that. I think it's one of the biggest lies that we're told is that life is really scary and that there's so much that we should avoid, and not taking risks will be able to avoid some of those pitfalls. And that's honestly one of the biggest regrets of the dying, is like not being able to live a life that is true to the authentic expression of their soul.
The greatest risk of all is not going for it. Richard Rudd said, "Fear is safe," and I really love that. It's
Love
like,
that.
be willing to step into it. Be bold. Who and what you are is bold. They say, the souls that even choose to incarnate in physicality and experience this extreme of separation from source and whence we came, and have amnesia to our, divinity and all the things we do. We're like super bold, like cutting edge explorers. And so step into that power. You are it, or you wouldn't be here. You'd be on the other side, like, eating spirit grapes. And
Brandon, I love you have so much creativity that kind of like emanates from you. And, I'm just curious for you, like, are there ways that you specifically or intentionally cultivate that within yourself?
Mm.
And do you kind of like switch back and forth between like the doing and the creativity, or like, what is your method?
Great question. And this is something that has really been bubbling up a lot for me lately, because the book project was so intensive. I was literally spending 12, 14-hour days behind a computer. And, people here at the Mystic Manor, when we shifted because of COVID from doing retreats to more of a, conscious community and subleasing to people in the community here in the LA area. There's people who are here for the last months who are like, wow, Brandon's kind of boring, like he's not really that, I'm holed away in my office, just like working, 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 and maybe a little grumpy at times, and maybe, and so and then I really in the last week or so, I've like, okay, this has come out. You have to switch this. Honestly, if I look back in retrospect, it's like I didn't navigate. I wouldn't give myself an A+ in the way I navigated it. Like too much. If I'm being completely honest, too much one without the other. Because one of the lessons I'm still, teaching best, what I most need to learn is you are the creator and created rolled into one. And that makes you a master of time and space ultimately. And we're learning how to bend. And I'm doing it in a good way with like, choosing to be the infinite child and having so much play where maybe a lot of people that I went to high school with look like they're just exhausted, tired, and older than my parents or something. And so I've navigated around that pitfall in a way that I have a super exciting, interesting life for the most part. And however, I'm really realizing it's like Osho said it well. He's like, everyone should meditate 20 minutes a day, unless you're too busy. You should meditate for an hour. And I think that's super important to get. And that's one for me because I'm so like, lit up and fiery that it's like, okay, don't just race to go do things. It's about finding the balance, creating space, stopping and smelling the roses, enjoying a moment, watching the rain or, and when you are super ambitious, overly ambitious isn't a good thing. We've been taught that it is, but it really isn't. And actually, you create space. Like how, the times I have made space and okay, you know what? I have all these things, this never ending to-do list. And I'm going to take a hike today instead. A lot of times I don't do the hike and I go, 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 go. And then my nervous system is kind of like, in a not so good way. The times where I create the space and if you really are paying attention, all of a sudden, oh, look at that email came through that I really wanted, and or this thing connected that actually created more success for me. It's like working smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
Once you understand that it's all about you being in the right vibrational state, and if you're in a overly amped nervous system is all out of whack because you're stressed and anxious and overworking, you're actually not in the creative zone where the miracles can flow in, the magic can flow in. So that's something that I'm really working hard to get better at.
Yeah. What are some of the things that you really, pay attention to in order to cultivate an elevated vibrational state?
Ooh, one of the biggest things is having these conversations. I get such a natural high because we're all, and everyone listening who's been on this journey of this show so far, we're just all the two of us are doing is navigating everyone into a vibrational pool. I see it as like infinite pools that are being offered to you. Hey, which one do you want to swim in today? And they all have different temperatures, and the waters are really calm in others, and some they're rough. And so as much as I can jump in this pool, I'm like, I'm literally, that which is likened to itself is drawn. So I'm just vibrating with the essence of all of the information, because these words are just our best way to symbolically represent a vibrational state. And so we're bathing in it in this moment, and so that's
Yeah.
probably my most effective way personally.
So question for you there. I mean, do you find yourself like hours on the mic, like interviewing, talking on your podcast? Like, how do you like structure your day?
Yeah, well, the podcast I record 3 days a week, and my co-host does 2 days a week, and then now with the book, what's exciting for me is I've been on, probably 25 other podcasts, but it's never been a focus in the past, and for the first time ever with the book, I'm stepping out and really focusing on being on some other shows, proactively going after it. And so that's really exciting for me because I know this next wave, like I'm going to get to do this more. And to people who haven't heard me talk about this 1400 times,
Yeah.
because honestly, I repeat myself all the time. It's always approaching the same information from different perspectives, but each time I'm in a different space vibrationally. The receiver is. You can hear the same thing 10 times, and it's at the 11th time, like, oh wow, it just clicked in a way because of where you're at in your own journey. So that's a big one for me. Really focusing on, getting. One of the things I think that people don't realize with, if you're ever feeling depressed or it's so important to just, Tony Robbins talks a lot about this, just moving your body. If you move your body at all and get sun, it's like these simple things, and we've all heard it, but it's profound. So if you can just, okay, I'm going to commit to at least a few minutes of meditation today. I'm going to commit to at least a few minutes of moving my body. At the very, you don't have to, you know, sometimes people get overwhelmed by thinking they need to do so much. Just start with a little bit. And so that sort of thing really helps me. And I love to play as well. Whenever I get, that's why I set up a sort of a conscious communal property. Um, because it's so, we thrive on connection and interaction. So that really feeds me, is the ability to connect with others, like-minded people, and just talking and sharing. And here, especially before COVID, we would have here at the Mystic Manor, Tuesday night is sound healing, Thursday night is
Oh, I love
soul
that.
jam, and it's like we have a big enough space where 25 people are just appeared in my living room that are epic. Like, so it's that helps a lot.
Yeah, such a cool vision. It's like I want to go there and visit.
Yes, you will. We're already doing it in a future now.
Yes. So I want to ask you, like, right now I just feel like it's such a powerful time on our planet for alchemy. And so your book comes at really a perfect time. But for anybody that's like listening, that's really kind of getting on that started on that journey of like really elevating their vibration and understanding that their
Hmm.
thoughts, that we're creating our reality. What advice do you have?
Mm. Like I was saying a moment ago, small actions to shift, because sometimes it can be so overwhelming. Like, I am stuck in this pattern of, here's how I've lived my life for 25 years, and now, oh my gosh, I've got to do a complete 180. And no, if you take you know if I were to shoot a love bomb, I won't say a missile, a love bomb from here to New York, right? And I set it on a certain trajectory, and if I just shift it by 1 degree, it ends up like somewhere totally different, right? And so just those little shifts, you know, a little bit of difference each day. So I would say, if you're tuning into this podcast, you're already doing something really great. This is like soul food. Like, we need this as much as we need, maybe even arguably more than physical nourishment, because if we want to have a peaceful life. And the thing that I would stress the most is understanding that your number one job, you don't need to figure out all the next steps. Do little things. And Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about this, how impactful it is by doing little changes. It completely changes how things are wiring in your brain. It just opens up a whole Pandora's box of possibility, these little shifts. So just starting to take those actions and understanding this, the number one job you have is not to figure out how you get from A to B or C or Z, all the steps. As we talked about earlier, life's what happens when your plans don't work out. I mean, you may have a vision anyway, and you see it from A to B, and it's really like this zigzag, that is really going to unfold. And a lot of times there's stop offs you had no idea you needed to pick up along the way for your tool belt. And so understanding the number one job you have is to manage your vibration. That is the only job, because everything comes from that. There is no out there. Most people out there chasing the carrot to, if I shift this and move this and apply for the job here and do this and all these things external, but there is no out there. It's all showing up as a reflection of your internal state. So your number one job is to manage your vibration. And if you get that, that's so empowering, because so many people have bought into the narrative that there's an out there and they should have went to college and they missed the boat here. And gosh, man, I had that opportunity. And Source can provide more opportunities than you can possibly imagine. You just have to be in the vibrational state to accept them. When I created, okay, Source, I want to create and manifest, you know, a massive company with lots of abundance flowing in. I had no interest in the travel business, but little did I know that was the path that was laid right before me to lead me there, right? As an example. So you have no idea. You don't need to know
Mm.
until you don't know until you know, right? And that's okay. That's part of the dance. Just managing your vibration and making that your number one focus is everything. And then also tying to that the understanding it's all happening for you, not to you. So even if something comes up, I'm focused on manage my vibration, and this screwed up thing from one vantage point or perspective happened. But do you really know it's screwed up? One of my favorite, um, do I have time to share a little story that's under
Please.
2 minutes?
Yeah.
So the Taoist farmer story. I don't know if you've ever heard this. And Taoism being this ancient philosophy that's very tied into everything we're talking about here. And the Taoist farmer, one day he had a horse that he used to plow his fields, and his horse ran away. And his neighbors observed this and came running over and said, "Oh my gosh, you're screwed. You're an old man. You need your horse. It's like that's your horsepower. Like without it, you can't manage your farm." The Taoist farmer, understanding all the things and living and breathing the things we're talking about, his response to the neighbors, maybe so. Maybe I am. Maybe I'm not. We'll see. The next day, the horse comes back with a wild horse that followed it. And wow, what do you know? I lost all my horsepower. I went from 1 to 0, and now I have 2 horsepower. I have double the horse laborers, right? The neighbors observe this, run over and say, "Oh my gosh, we thought you were screwed, and now we realize that you are super blessed." Dallas farmer says, "Maybe so," right? Then his son, his only human helper, tries to break in and tame this wild horse. It throws him, it breaks his leg. The neighbors observe this, come over and say, "Oh my gosh, we thought you were screwed. You lost your horse." Then we thought, wow, look how blessed he is. He got the horse back plus another one. And now you've lost your son, your human helper for the whole season. You're really screwed. You need him more than you did the horses. Now you're really screwed. The Dallas farmer says, "Maybe so." The next day, the military comes around gathering up young men to take off to war, to sure to die in the front lines. They come to take the Dallas farmer's son, who's of perfect age. "Come on, you're going with us." Oh, he's laid up in bed with a broken leg. They pass him by because he's of no use to them. Neighbor comes over. "We thought you were screwed. Then we thought you were blessed. We thought you were screwed. Now we really realize you're blessed." Dallas farmer, what is his response? "Maybe
Maybe
so."
so.
Yeah.
Love that story. I love that. And I love how you tell it as well. It's such a good, and we don't know in that moment.
And you don't need to know. You just have to trust the mystery. All you need to know is it's happening for you, not to you, and you're along for the ride. And you don't want to cling to the rocks as you take the journey, because then the water just beats you against the rocks and it's a painful, miserable journey. Instead, you become a cosmic surfer flowing, in the ocean of eternity, and trusting where it leads you.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Brandon, this has been an amazing conversation. I feel like I could talk to you for hours. I want to ask you a couple more questions, but first, if you could just share where people can tune into your podcast, get your book, learn about all the things.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's see. You can tune into the podcast. Positive Head is the podcast. Anywhere that you get your podcast, wherever you're listening to this podcast, I'm sure we're there too. So yeah, I'd love to connect with any of you there. And like I said, we do five episodes a week. I also just, of course, released The Golden Key, Modern Alchemy to Unlock Infinite Abundance. And we're actually gifting that as part of practicing what I preach. How do I spread this message as far and wide as possible? So, yeah, you actually have a code. I'm allowing others to gift it because,
Love it.
right, it feels so good to be able to share anything, and yeah, so that's the concept. So what was the code that you created?
I think it's soul, Soul.
Ooh, you got a good one. Okay, yeah. So if you go to goldenkey.gift and use the code SOUL, then you will be able to download the audio or ebook as our gift, both Emily and I's gift to you. And yeah, what's great about it is then you get the opportunity to create your own golden key code after getting it. And as I said early on, I think the number one thing we can do is to spread this information to as many of our brothers and sisters as possible to help, wake our planet up and help us to make this tricky transition moment we're in. And so you'll have a code that you can share. Um, if they come back towards the end, or you ever come back towards the end, you're invited to play an abundance manifestation game that entails you can essentially pay for the book after reading it any amount you want, and sort of use that as your anchor point to manifest more abundance in whatever form that you want. And we have whole exercises laid out, for you how you step through this whole process. And then, yeah, if you do the same thing and you share it with other people and they come and play or get any of our other golden goodies, like we actually have like golden key necklaces,
Oh,
like are on the cover of the book, and then a
super
print of
cool.
the cover, which there's a story of magical synchronicity in the book of how the cover. I went to ask my visionary artist friend to paint the cover, and he proceeded to tell me about a dream he had 2 months earlier where he was at the Mystic Manor hunting for the key to everything. And he was so inspired by the dream, he had already started this key painting, that ended up being the cover. So there's all these other golden goodies on the site, and we just share 50% with all the people who are playing and participating. And it's a good way to create more for everyone.
Super cool. I love it. Yeah. And I love the cover of your book, and the necklace that you're holding up is really beautiful. So people can go to your site and check it out and check out all those goodies that you're offering, which is so, so amazing. Brandon, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your light. Thank you for this amazing conversation. Anything left that is on your heart that you want to share with our listeners?
Mm, yeah. Thank you for having me. And I look forward to meeting in 3D here at the Mystic Manor at some point. I have a feeling that will happen. And we will celebrate existence in that moment. And yeah, so anything that I care to share, I think the most important thing is Emily is not special. I'm not special. Yes, we're special in the same way that you're special. Like it's all divinity. Everywhere you go, you're there waiting for yourself. You can do the thing. You can do it. You can and even if you set out to do one thing and it doesn't come in the way that you want, understanding that if you want to know the results of what you're setting out to do in the new world that is emerging out of this, I call it the COVID chrysalis, we're emerging into the next chapter of humanity more than ever. In the past, someone could be in the separation time of the caterpillar, and I talk about this in detail in the book, the journey of the caterpillar to the butterfly. But it served people to at the expense of others, generate wealth and whatever, or we were in a time that separation was meant to happen. Now we're in a time of unification where we're meant to come back together, and it's all about helping and lifting one another up. A rising tide raises all ships. And so, understanding that if you want to know you have a hack. I can share with you a hack or a trick or a vantage point is a better word for understanding what outcome you'll get for anything you set out to do. All you need to know is the intention going in. What is your intention going in? My intention is to help people. My intention is to, Gandhi said, if you want to find yourself, lose yourself in the service of others. Why does that hold true? Because there are no others. So whatever there's something that is perfect for you that no soul is more divinely designed to do than you. There's plenty of room for all of us. We are infinitely abundant, who and what we are part of. So set the intention to do whatever it is that you're going to do whenever you do it. And if the intention is pure, the outcome, it may most likely it won't show up as you envisioned. Rarely does it. And that's a gift to us. So, let go of that attachment to the idea of how it needs to manifest and trust the mystery, trust the process. And just know, hey, if my intention is good, wherever it leads me is going to be a reflection of the foundation that it's built upon, right? So once you understand that you are as worthy as anyone ever has been, could be, or will be throughout all of eternity, the universe has lived 12 billion, 14 billion years to come to the evolutionary point that it is you. You are the tip of the evolutionary spear, and set your intentions, and just, you know, fear is safe. Go for it.
Thank you. I love that. Thank you so much. So inspiring. I think that that is